So today we're sitting down with Vince Lynch and Owen McGrath over at IV.AI, and most of our members know both of you. And thank you for the contributions over the years. I know, Vince, you've been presenting, you've been available for questions, you've done a lot of virtual programming. And Owen, of late, you have been all over Slack and responding to people and helping them with questions. I think to some degree, when you're talking to a large contact center focused audience, and these operations folks, they're very curious of where people are having some successes or challenges. But we're not on the front end anymore. And I think there's some degree we're getting pulled in this tractor beam of cloud. Everything's a service, right? So software as a service, platform as a service. There's a recent article that we shared with each other from TechCrunch that talked about AI as a service and the inherent problems associated with thinking of it in that manner. So since most of our contact center members, they're either in the cloud, in part or in whole, they're very comfortable and knowledgeable about using such applications as workforce management or maybe speech analytics or some kind of a quality system as a service if they're not all in contact center as a service. Let me ask you to get started. What are the inherent challenges with thinking about AI in that manner?
Let me go first. I think the way that David just described it is really on point. The thing that I think is often confusing about AI, because it is a product that gets delivered through in similar ways that you would get a BPO into your funnel, or you would get speech to text, or you would get a routing software, or you would get your CRM tool, or you get robotic process automation for that matter. All these things kind of come through your contact center in a similar way where there's an API and you plug into them and then they do the thing they're meant to do. The thing about AI that is really important to keep in mind is that in order for it to work well, it needs to understand very specific ideas. The AI needs to be able to hear an utterance from a customer, or hear something that an agent is saying, or see the kind of email or tweet from social media, whatever is the input to the contact center. The AI needs to be able to understand that concept. So in order for it to understand that concept, it needs to have lots of references to that concept having happened previously. So it needs to have seen lots of examples of that same concept from that same channel. Because the way someone says it on voice to their IVR is different from how they say it when they're speaking to an agent, which is different from how they write it into Twitter when they're complaining on Twitter, which is different to how they type it in an email. And each of those different channels have their own uniqueness to them. And the way that the AI understands the thing that is being said is different, not just based on the words that are being said, but also the channel that's coming through. So you can't really think about it the same way you would think about a routing software, to your point, David. You can't think about it the same way you'd think about just speech to text, where it's just converting it from one format to another. This is a lot of additional complexity that happens there. So you can't just kind of drop it in the same way you would those other products. And that means you have to think about it differently, which is fine, because once you understand the way it's different, the value is also so much greater. So greater complexity going in, far greater value coming out. So you have this amplification of automation that can happen there. So instead of doing something once and having to do it over and over again, you now have an AI that can understand this thing. The AI understands this thing. You can now think of it in relation to the way the AI can think. So you can think about it in relation to the statistics of all those things. So that voice channel, that email channel, that tweet, how does that relate to my overall problem now that the AI understands the concept? So maybe I'm not automating through Twitter, or maybe I'm not automating even through my IVR yet, but I'm understanding through the AI. And the more that the AI can understand, and the more ideas of the things that you need it to understand in your contact center that it learns, the more you can look at the whole of your contact center from the lens of the AI and understand where some of the challenges are, where some of the opportunities are to help the customer's confusion, to help the agents perform better, to make sense of volume and cost in NPS scores. how you can look at it now through this lens of being truly informed. And that's kind of the thing that I think people really need to think about here, that it's more complex to implement. So you can't just have a one-size-fits-all equation with AI. AI learns based on very focused understanding. So therefore, this idea of just like a company that is selling you software that is doing your routing, unlikely to be able to teach an AI to do that kind of stuff, because it's a very different type of technical process that's happening, and a different set of people working on that technical process that need to understand the complexities of it to make it work and make it make sense to the contact center. But once it's in, you have this new way of thinking about it all. So you can be informed, you can be smarter, you can ask better questions. The AI can tell you about questions you may want to ask as well. And then you can think about, okay, now how do I automate this? How do I reduce all this cost? And the reality is, because an AI is so good at doing those things in a space like the contact center, the AI shouldn't be expensive, because your contact center is already expensive. So you can use that operational costs of your contact center to pay for your AI, and that AI should be able to do a really big lift for the whole system.
Okay, so the first thing we're learning is that AI is not an off-the-shelf product. In fact, I'm not even sure it is a product. It sounds like it's something that we implement so that it will learn and adapt to that specific business need, not necessarily something that you could get off the shelf. So, Owen, if we're going to look at this in the contact center specifically, can you speak to where AI is having some traction at kind of a broader scale, and perhaps the opposite, where it's not doing well, or where people are running into challenges, and why?
To quickly put maybe a bit of a sharper edge on what Vince was saying, at the core is you need to train the AI models, the natural language processing models that underlie the technology, to understand what is being talked about. So we have CCNG members that work in health insurance. We have CCNG members that do contact centers for utilities, and then others for retail. And that's very different types of conversation that's happening. And so that there isn't this off-the-shelf solution that you're right. So where people are being successful is, to Vince's point, when they take that initial step to really work with an AI partner to understand exactly what's going on, and really have, deploy analytics effectively to say, okay, this is the type of concepts, the conversations that are happening. A lot of this can happen on a very light lift, because you're literally just ingesting the historical data, the call transcripts and recordings, the chat transcripts, et cetera, into and then training those models, and then extracting those insights to then say, here's the best places in the user journey to automate. And here's the areas where don't even try. It's too complicated. Humans talk about one topic in far too many different ways that AI can't make sense of it. So just go straight to an agent on that. But here's another way that you can really speed up that journey. And that gets to the cost savings that Vince was talking about. Where people come short of that is, I think, when people see this opportunity, oh, I can automate X%, therefore I can save Y dollars. Let's move as quickly as we can towards that. And there's a lot of software where you're sort of dragging and dropping, and you're making these quick user journeys and say, let's automate through. Maybe that's not even the right user journey. Maybe you're not thinking, and it's not going to work as effectively. So it was interesting. I was looking at some stats. So I was looking at a top CCaaS provider, and they had released some research where they polled a bunch of customer experience leaders, and 55% of those respondents believed that AI will have a short-term negative impact on customer satisfaction. So that's more than half of the people think that in the short term. That struck me as crazy. I mean, to think about the CX leader like being like, okay, yeah, first QBR after the AI has come in place. Hey, everybody, yeah, I know CSAT is down, but it's gonna work its way out, and we're gonna sort it out with this new AI solution. I mean, go poll the CCNG audience. Who's gonna step up for that meeting? And that to me sounded crazy. And what it sounds like to me is that there has to be some truth and some real experience there of people saying, hey, we're going to try to automate a journey. And what they did was they too rapidly deployed AI, thinking, okay, people are going to ask A, B, or C, and then they make those trees, and then if A, then it's one of these three. They're doing some really basic speech recognition, and then saying, okay, this is how we route them, and users get upset because look, an AI, people are just becoming used to and comfortable, and not just millennials and Gen Zers, but humans in general, saying, hey, if I talk to this AI appropriately, I can get my issue resolved quickly. But the worst thing you want to do is go talk to an AI for 5 minutes that's not very smart, and then still end up with an agent. And then, of course, now your agent has got a more unhappy customer than if they just sat there on hold listening to elevator music. So in my mind, I think where it's not working out is where people are rushing to implement some sort of cookie cutter type of AI solution. And in many ways, the reason why this is happening is, you have a lot of these core software as a service offerings out there for CCaaS, for CRM, and everybody, it's just such a buzzword. Everybody needs an AI solution. They don't quite know what AI is, but they sure know that they need it. And so then they're rushing to implement, and that's what's leading to those negative outcomes. When the positive outcome is if you just slow down and take that first 3 months of your deployment to really understand, but not just what's happening in the contact center, but to build and train the AI models to really specifically understand what's happening in that particular contact center, so that you then know what to automate. And then when you automate, then it's really effective.
You walked us through kind of a process of the
Right.
steps of the recommended. And again, I want to remind our audience, these are people that do just AI. This is their focus. These are experts in the AI. These are not generalists who, grabbed an AI and threw it into the bucket as well. Walk us through kind of a little bit of that process that you recommended.
So the first part is often very lightweight, at least from an integration standpoint, where, like I said, you start with, you've got a wealth of data already. You've got the contact center transcripts or recordings, which can be transcribed, email transcripts, et cetera. You start training, you understand those concepts, and then you start understanding, okay, these are the aspects of the user journey that can be automated. And then these are also the ways, then you map to even, the agent tools. So then start looking, okay, finding those disconnects. Where are people getting tripped up? What's causing a lot of confusion? Where do we see conversation really in a wide, going in multiple different directions? Drill down there and then map on that topic. What are the knowledge bases saying? And then you finding your opportunity to refine your knowledge bases. And then you also go a step further and then look at each agent and saying, okay, with the agents that have the most or correlated to the lowest average handle time, whatever your indicator is, average handle time or NPS or CSAT, saying, okay, the best agents are using these phrases, these words, and this type of messaging, and the worst are using these. So then that gives you the insights to train. And again, so this AI isn't necessarily just that robotic voice that's automating, but this is AI that the contact center team can take back and say, this is how we make agents more effective. And that those agents will naturally increase CSAT and they will naturally reduce average handle time because you've also then improved their tooling with the knowledge base.
Seems like the first level understanding of AI appears to be this, we're automating something.
Sure, yeah. I think part that the AI is doing is really important because it's making sense of all of this all these conversations that are happening, all these signals that are available in the contact center. And then the second bit is how do you make those signals available to the contact center team? So we have this dashboard that we use for this part of the problem where it allows the contact center person to go in and compare what good agents are saying and look at just what the good agents are saying through the lens of AI. So it's like this conversation problem from customer plus agents with best CSAT scores plus lowest amount of time it took them to answer those questions, plus what does the AI think about that? Where's the AI seeing opportunity there inside of this spectrum that I'm creating? And they can just literally set those different facets in their dashboard and then look at just those conversations and then get the output of the AI as a sentence. The customers are coming in here. The reason that the NPS score is so low is because they're saying this thing is actually about this other thing that this knowledge base doesn't even reference. So in the tool, they're able to see what the AI is doing, see it through that lens, and also validate it themselves by looking at the conversations, and then say, this is great, we need to share this with our our content team to be able to build out a new knowledge base article. And we should really hyper prioritize that because we're seeing thousands of examples here over the last few months, and this is a very expensive problem for us. And then we also need to get that over to the agents in the contact center really quickly so that they can change the way they're responding. And we have this automated chatbot here. We want to drop that into our automated chatbot and make sure that it's fixing the problem there too. So by having the AI that is inspecting and organizing, plus a tool that allows the people that are working in the contact center managers to do their own experimentation and to look at their own questions that they have at the contact center, you end up with this kind of collaborative team aspect that's happening there, where everybody's coming from a more informed position and they're able to see what's going on with all the chaos of the contact center in a way they've never been able to do before. And where people are kind of look at the dashboard and they just kind of go, I want that. And they just like point at the screen because they've just never been able to do that before. And that's where it kind of really becomes meaningful because you're collaborating with people that are thinking about this stuff all the time. The contact center managers, the people that are managing agents, the people that are doing QA and training are all able to look at the same tool and go, well, cool, I'm going to pull this into my training workflow for new agents. Or where's all my churn happening with all these agents that are quitting? What are the questions they keep getting over and over again? How do we pull that into an automated conversation through IVR or through chatbot or whatever to try to reduce the amount of friction on our agents? And does that increase the amount of retention we get with the agents and how long they stick around? Does that increase their job satisfaction? What other kind of ways can we look at success beyond just saving money and saving customers time, which obviously the first step is like, how do you take it from there and go further?
So let me ask this as kind of our final question. What's the sticking point? What's the holdup? Why is it they don't understand it? Is that it's in the hands of the wrong department, for lack of a better word? What are your views on the holdup about implementing successfully AI in the contact center?
To me, I don't think there's one single sticking point. I'd say in one area you have probably some just hesitancy amongst people to say, who from their own experience say, I don't like talking to chatbots, I don't like talking to IVAs and automated, robotic voices. It's not a good experience for me. And they draw on that personal experience and they say, that's not going to work out. The other point to this effect, there are plenty of, despite great case studies out there, there's a lot of case studies that had negative CSAT outcomes. Nobody wants to put their name to that. And then I think in other cases, people just look and they're like, wow, like that's really overwhelming. Like implementing an AI system, okay, it's going to touch the CCAS software, the phone software, it's going to touch CRM. You've got, all IT people and training people, et cetera, that suddenly they're like, wow, this is a lot. And it just seems overwhelming that causes people to push back, not realizing that there's initial sort of iterative steps where you can, like my initial point, start with just a data dump of transcripts and then just take those learnings and those analytics that you get out of that and then share them across and then start to sort of try to get some process change there and get some of that initial sort of steps towards seeing what those opportunities are before you start going to try to boil the ocean.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that it's exciting for people. I think everybody is excited about AI, so you get a lot of kind of cooks in the kitchen, and you end up with it finding it harder to get things done because everybody kind of wants to have their 2 cents involved, and they often, what we see is that it's not really a hesitancy, it's like an overexcitement. Where it's like everybody wants to become AI experts. They get that this stuff is really important and exciting, and they want to learn how to do it. But they start to introduce it, and then they have teams from IT coming in that want it done a certain way, and then the rest of the C-suite are maybe working on some other AI problems that are somewhat connected, but not really necessarily the same thing. I think a lot of that goes back to the misconceptions in the space. Especially around around how AI works and what it does, and again, how challenging it is as a thing to implement. Just because, you know, one team maybe in operations is working on AI as it relates to like legal documents inside of the organization and making sense of those and organizing those. That problem is completely different from the contact center problem, and they don't touch each other at all, really. So the idea that sometimes things get derailed, we're like, oh, we were doing our AI thing over here, and let's do that first. And then it's kind of, you know, 12, 18 months before they get around to these other parts of their organization that they should be thinking about them maybe more independently. That all these things are kind of coming into play. I think the core of it is kind of to Owen's point, which is you need to figure out the strategic piece at the beginning so that you're approaching it from an informed place, as opposed to just doing it to tick a box. What are the opportunities and the biggest benefits that we can get from an AI? And how does that relate to the different steps that we will take in order to get to a place where it offers us those big benefits? And as we're going through those different steps, how do we prove value and have them walk us towards that really huge benefit, so that we can make sure that we're constantly defining success and proving that it's going to happen, and show value in relation to chipping away at that big kind of goal, that North Star.
I think as we write about this, Owen, it really is helping people better understand the concept of AI. And to bring full circle here, why would you work with someone who's a generalist when you know darn well the thing's not going to succeed unless someone's an expert that can help you totally tailor this? And that's just step one. There could be an infinite amount of steps of what AI could do long term.
Agree, 100%. And
good thing, because I was going to hit end recording if you said disagree.
No, and again, I could go on for hours on this. So I'm excited that we were able to have this initial digestible conversation, and I do think there's a lot more that we can dig into, and I can follow up with some writing, or we can do some more talks on this. But this is
we're not done by any means, but we just set the table. That's really all we've done. You know, and it may be better said, reset the table. And I think the hype gets ahead of practical application. So thank you guys for breaking this down today.